Hello. Um, it's great to have you join us for this Dharma talk celebrating Shinran Shonin's birthday. Um, to share my Dharma talk, I wanted to use my PowerPoint because for some of you, it may be helpful to have the words written and words that you can see. So allow me to share the screen. Okay, so once again, thank you for joining us to celebrate the birthday of the founder of Jodo Shinshu School, Shinran Shonin. By the way, Shinran is his name, and Shonin means the sage or the saint. I'm sure that Shinran would not have preferred to be called a saint or a sage, but it's the tradition in the school that he founded to refer to him with much respect. So please know that when we say saint or sage, that we use them because we respect him, we honor him, but Shinran himself was a very humble person who saw himself as one of everyone, I mean, part of the group and on equal footing. So the topic of my talk today is Shinran's authentic individuality embraced in wisdom and compassion, its meaning in the lives of us ordinary people. Shinran lived 850 years ago. Actually, as we celebrate his birthday, he would be 848 years old, and in a couple of years, in 2 more years, there will be a huge celebration of the 850th birthday memorial, not memorial, but celebration, celebrating his birth. And he is the founder of Jodo Shinshu School. Sometimes it's called Jodo Shinshu or Jodo Shin, or just simply Shin. And it is one of the largest, in fact, in terms of membership, it is the largest school of Buddhism in Japan. So in honor of his birthday, we are celebrating this service. And once again, the emphasis today would be on authentic individuality. That may be a term that you may not be very familiar with, but it is a quality that I think is important. And it's also important to note that when I say individuality, it doesn't mean individualism, rugged individualism that we often associate with American mentality. It is not self-centered. It is not egoistic. It is authentic individuality because it is embraced in a context of wisdom and compassion in which we are embraced. And so I'll talk about that and explain that. And to make some references to what it means for us in our ordinary lives. So I want to begin by quoting John Paul II, the late Pope, who was highly revered and someone I respected very much. In fact, in 2002, when I went to Rome for the Day of Prayer, I was able to meet with him and shake his hand. And In fact, he was already suffering from Parkinson, so he couldn't speak. So when I shook his hand, he grabbed my hand and he raised it way up like that, and then dropped it, which I took to mean that he was giving me encouragement, because I told him that I had come to Rome and having participated in this day of prayer, that I now want to work harder for the peace of the world, peace in the world. And so I think he took my hand and raised it high and said, "Go ahead, do it." He couldn't verbalize it, but he was able to say it with his gesture. Having said all that, once John Paul II was critical of Buddhism, or an enlightened person within the Buddhist tradition, and he wrote in his book called Crossing the Threshold of Hope. He wrote, and I quote, "The fullness of such a detachment is not union with God, but what is called nirvana, a state of perfect indifference with regard to the world." So the word indifference doesn't strike us with a positive feeling, because we feel that an enlightened person, someone who has attained nirvana, is an enlightened, awakened person. And that does not mean that he or she is indifferent. Well, in this case, I'm sure he was referring to Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, and he was describing his state of mind as being indifferent with regard to the world. And this is part of the image that some people have of Buddhism, is that it's too passive and acquiescent and like here, indifferent, uncaring, without emotion. And so I want to today talk about how that is not the case. And here we have a statue of Shinran Shonin at the school, the university that I taught in Tokyo for 20 years. And this is situated right in the front gate of the university, and I would pass by this statue every day. And I was very much moved by it and inspired by it, because here is a person who is deeply engaged, deeply committed to helping others. And so he is not indifferent. So this statue represents the opposite of indifference. He is here, 62 years old, having taught in the Tokyo area for 20 years, sharing his teachings amongst the masses. And now he's going back to his hometown, Kyoto. There was no bullet train, so he is ready to walk. And at 62 years old, back then, he is full of vigor, full of vitality. You can see the expression on his face that now, having taught and propagated for 20 years, now he wants to go back to Kyoto to do more writing so that he can do his propagation through his writing. So here's an example of an enlightened person within our tradition who represents vigor, vitality, and authentic individuality. Here, as I said, he has spent 20 long years far away from his hometown, sharing the teachings with others and garnering or acquiring so many disciples in the Kanto area that is a little bit north of Tokyo. And he was also definitely, as I said before, not indifferent. He showed emotion And one line that I really love is this one here. It says, "Oh, how happy I am. Oh, how happy I am." Talking about his what the teachings has meant for him. And then he goes on to say, "My mind, heart is planted in the soil of universal vow, and I allow my thoughts to flow in the inconceivable Dharma ocean." It's a beautiful passage. So he is just, deeply um, joyful. And this, because he is firmly rooted in the universal vow, which is a promise of Buddha Amitabha to embrace us all and lead us to enlightenment. And this affirmation allows him to be free and not be so concerned about every little worries and problems in our lives, but just allow my thoughts to flow in the inconceivable Dharma ocean. And then he was deeply concerned about the peace and the conditions of the world. So in one of his letters to his disciples, he wrote, "May peace prevail in the world, and may the Buddha's teachings spread widely." And so this was the conviction. This was his orientation, how he lived. So he's far from being indifferent and uncaring. And when I mentioned authentic individuality, I stress the fact that it's just not simply, self-centered individualism, that he understands that he is embraced in wisdom and compassion. And one metaphor that really conveys this truth is called the Indra's net of jewels. And here I have a modern depiction of it. And the metaphor goes as such. In the sky, there is a net, and it spreads, infinitely outwards. At each eye of the net, there is a jewel. And as you can see by this depiction. And so let's just take the center jewel here. And this jewel is illuminating, it is shining. And precisely because he is illuminated by others around it. It is illuminated by others around it, especially those that are close to this jewel, but also jewels that are, 10 yards away, or even 100 yards away, or 100 kilometers away. That even a jewel that is 100 kilometers away is illuminating this jewel to some extent. And that is not all. That not only is this jewel being illuminated, this jewel can also illuminate others, like this, especially those that are nearby. So it expresses the view that that one jewel is able to illuminate all the other jewels. And so this metaphor expresses the truth of interconnectedness and interdependence. And there is a quote from Shinran, which I love, and it goes, "All beings have been my fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters in the course of many lives." So obviously this is a metaphor for our existence, that if you take this as myself, then I myself have been illuminated and continue to be illuminated by others, not only now, but in the distant past, in the past as well, past, present, and the future. And this quote expresses that feeling that even in the course of many lives, that all beings have been connected with me. We have had connection. And so it goes to the heart of the deep interconnectedness of our existence. And not only that, another aspect of this truth of interdependence is the authentic individuality that I have been emphasizing, that each jewel, for one, is unique in a sense that there is no others that is exactly the same in terms of shape, color, hue, the illumination, the way it illuminates, the way the of its illumination. So just like all of us, there is that every person is unique, and also that we are able to contribute to others, so earlier I said that this receive illumination from others, but I also said that this jewel can also illuminate others. So there is a term, a phrase, all for one, one for all. And all for one means all the jewels are illuminated by this one, and one for all expresses the view that this jewel illuminates all the others. So it goes both ways. And the other point about authentic individuality, other than what I mentioned, that each jewel is unique, each jewel can contribute to others, and each jewel is precious and has dignity. And this is another aspect of the Buddhist notion of authentic individuality. Okay, so here, this in a nutshell explains the title of my talk, that, authentic individuality embraced in wisdom and compassion. Now, wisdom and compassion is derived from all the others that provides wisdom and compassion to myself, to each of us. And ultimately, wisdom and compassion represents not only the jewels, but the totality of all the other jewels and beyond that we cannot even express. And we call that Amida Buddha. And so the emphasis in Jodo Shinshu is that we are embraced in this wisdom and compassion that we call Amida. And that one, and because we are embraced, we are fine just as we are in this life, and even when this life ends, we are embraced in this enormous, unfathomable wisdom and compassion. And because of that, we gain strength, a spiritual strength, that we are all right as we are. And that is why I call it authentic individuality. Now, speaking of authentic individuality, the Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, all Buddhism, is said to have made these final words as he was dying, and his disciples asked him, "Who will be who will inherit this organization, this group, or who can we rely on once you're gone?" But the Buddha did not leave a successor. And what he said was, make yourself the light and make the Dharma the light. So here, the emphasis on authentic individuality is found in the first part, make yourself the light. So Buddhism is not a religion where you, blindly entrust in what the teachers have to say, but he said, test it out. But at the same time, you cannot, there is the teachings that we follow. So it is your decision to follow the teachings, the Dharma. So anyway, one of the final words that he left was this expression, which I love: make yourself the light, make the Dharma the light. And speaking of, testing things for yourself, there is a famous words that he left, passage from the Kalama Sutta, and he made this well-known passage. So I'm going to read that to you. Now Kalamas, this are a group of people, a tribe, and he said, don't go by reports, by legends, by traditions, by scripture, by logical conjecture, by inference, by analogies, by agreement through pondering views, by probability, or by thought. So this contemplative is our teacher. When you know for yourselves that these qualities are skillful, these qualities are blameless, these qualities are praised by the wise, these qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to welfare and to happiness, then you should enter and remain in them. The passage is a little bit complex here, but essentially it's saying don't go just by tradition or by even what the scripture says, but finally, only if you have, been convinced yourself that this is on the right path, then you accept it and then begin to practice it. So it is not a religion of blind faith. So Shinran too inherited this spirit. Once his disciples, a group of disciples from the Kanto area that I talked about earlier in the Tokyo area, came to visit him in Kyoto, which is 350 miles. It's a long trip, and they all walked on. They went there on foot. So it is a journey that required a lot of effort and planning. But they had a question, a burning question that they had to have Shinran, their teacher, answer. And that burning question had to do with the rumor that Shinran had taught teaching other than the main teaching based on Buddha Amitabha or Amida Buddha and Shinjin realization, or the Nembutsu. Nembutsu means the recitation of the name. So with true understanding of oneself and others and Amida, one recites the name out of deep entrusting and realization of the infinite and immeasurable wisdom and compassion. One can be saved and led to nirvana. That was a teaching, but they had heard that maybe that Shinran had taught something else. So when they come to him, Shinran says that, no, I have not. I don't have any other teaching than what I have taught you all these years. And he says, well, if you still are not convinced, go to the southern capital or the northern mountain, where there are many scholar monks who know a lot, and you can learn from them. So he gave them an option to explore for themselves. And then finally, he says to them that beyond this, whether you take up and accept the Nembutsu, or whether you abandon it, is for each of you to determine. So Nembutsu here is reference to the core teachings that I just talked about. So the point here is that he honors the authentic individuality of each of his students. He doesn't say, you must follow me. I told you so, and just without question, just follow me. He doesn't say that. And this is the spirit of authentic individuality and openness. Shinran was also that, let's just say, authentic individuality gives one confidence. And we can all use that in our lives, can't we? I mean, one of the things that one of the reasons why we suffer and have difficulties that sometimes we're not confident in our thoughts and convictions, but with authentic individuality, that sense of confidence strengthens and allows one to express oneself, when we find things that are not in keeping with what we consider to be important and true. So Shinran, in his main writings, one of his main writings, criticized even the emperor. Now, in those days, emperor was God, was like God. That if you criticize an emperor, you had a potential to be not only arrested and even be executed. But when the emperor contributed to the suppression of his Buddhist group, he was forceful in his criticism. And here is what he said: the emperor and his ministers, acting against the Dharma and violating human rectitude, became enraged and embittered. And he goes on to explain why he thought that the emperor acted against the Dharma and violated human rectitude and got enraged and embittered. So here he is quite critical, and he wrote it on paper. And so, and this kind of expression comes from, I believe, from his strong, authentic individuality. Now, I want to share a couple of experiences related to authentic individuality in my life. Recently, I was back in California visiting my family, and I went shopping at a well-known market called Trader Joe's, and where I go quite often. And as I was waiting in line at the checkout counter, and my turn came, so I moved up, and this lady, she had gotten the cart from the previous customer, and she pushed it against me and said, get away, move back, in a very harsh manner and rude way. And I thought she was kidding, but I realized she wasn't. And so this was, I didn't obviously feel good, but I thought, oh, well, maybe she's having a bad day. And throughout, she seemed so angry. And then I only had a few things to buy. So the checkout was done quickly. And so she gave me the receipt. So I said, thank you. And she didn't say a word. In fact, she still continued to look rather, upset or whatever. But I decided, well, in America these days, this was before, this was 2 years ago. So it was before the coronavirus pandemic situation. And plus she was an Asian lady, my age. So it wasn't, I didn't think it had to do with, uh, the race. And, but, in the spirit of wisdom and compassion, I just let it go. And I thought, well, she must have had a bad day. And then the next day, this incident kept cropping up, and I became very rather well. I wasn't happy, of course, being treated like that, and then it welled up to a point where I said, "Well, I have to live up to the other aspect of my Buddhist teaching, that is the authentic individuality, which includes having confidence in expressing your views when you feel that there was some, improper acts carried out towards you. Not just simply accepting, but to express yourself, to say what's on your mind, because it's the right thing to do. But I had emphasized with kind of a compassion, understanding, appreciation, acceptance. But that so that is only part of it. I think that Buddhist enlightenment doesn't mean accepting everything just as they are, but sometimes you have to speak up. And so next day I went back to the market, and I went up to her and I said, "Do you remember me?" And she obviously did remember. And I said, I would like to talk to you about what happened yesterday. And she knew exactly what I meant. And so she said, "Well, let's go talk to the manager." So we went to the manager, and I told the manager what had happened. And she obviously denied that she had been rude or whatever. And but the point was that I was able to express how I felt, and then express to the manager that this one of their workers had carried out a certain kind of behavior that was unacceptable to one of the customers. And I knew that she knew me, and because I told her, when I received the receipt, and I said, "Thank you, but you didn't even say anything." And she said something to the effect that, "Well, I didn't hear you." Well, I said, "Well, so you remember." Well, anyway, but the bottom line is that I felt that I was able to express myself, not always keeping things in. Enduring is not, unnecessarily is not an example of Buddhist awakening or enlightenment or Buddhist truth. That sometimes, again, is to express when there are injustices. And this goes to many, many things. And Buddhism often, emphasizes interdependence and harmony, but not harmony at the expense of authentic individuality. And finally, I wanted to close with a phenomenon that is taking place in America that has to do with hate towards Asian American, or violence or harassment of Asian American because of the COVID pandemic. And I was asked by a Tricycle Buddhist magazine in an interview what I thought about it. And my response was that based on my notion of authentic individuality, is that first of all, those of us who are Asian American, or that we don't take on the hatred or anger of others and impose it on ourselves, and regarding ourselves to be the problem, that we are to be blamed we are inferior, or we caused it. That is not the case. So we have to be very clear in where we stand. The problem with the situation is theirs, but don't take on or don't internalize the hatred or anger within yourself. Know that you are embraced in wisdom and compassion, that you are doing the best you can, just like anybody else in this pandemic situation. So the point is to be strong within, based on the authentic individuality that I have been talking about, that we are embraced in this wisdom and compassion, and that we should not be blamed for what is not, what we have not done. And so that is part of the entire message that I am presenting, that of being affirmed in the authentic individuality that comes to light when we understand the teachings well. So the bottom line is that if you are, hopefully that you will be interested in the teachings and dig deeper, learning more. And as you do, the sense of true self, which I'm calling authentic individuality, will become stronger, so that you will be able to affirm life and express joy, and to care for others, pray for peace and work for peace, and certainly not indifferent, uncaring about the world. For those are the qualities that we find in Shinran Shonin and Shakyamuni Buddha, and for that matter, in the saints of other true great religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism. So all these religions in its true form help all of us to become develop authentic individuality within the context of wisdom and compassion. So here finally is that statue again of Shinran Shonin. Oh, how happy I am. My mind and heart is planted firmly in the soil of the universal vow, and I allow my thoughts to flow in the inconceivable Dharma ocean. May peace prevail in the world, and may the Buddhist teachings spread widely. Thank you for joining us, and may your day be a wonderful day. Nam mandals, nam mandals, nam mandals.